The Fort Rock Christmas Valley Basin of Central Oregon seems to have a never-ending supply of interesting geology. While not the most creative name, Crack in the Ground looks a lot like something that would come from a wild imagination. There is a lot to learn from the crack and nearby formations, or you can enjoy a hike and look at some rocks. We have visited this ancient lake basin for videos a few times before, but there is still more of interest, so we're back. Crack in the Ground is the main attraction that brings people to this part. It's a 2-mile long tension fracture that can be walked, climbed, or crawled through. Towards the north end of the crack touches another point of interest, the Four Craters lava field. The perfect line of 4 craters runs parallel to the crack, and the lava field flows into it. Northwest of the crack is Green Mountain, which is a very old eruption point for this area. The nearby points of interest help to tell the story of Crack in the Ground's formation. The road in from the south wasn't too bad this time, but conditions can change. It's 5 or so miles of mostly smooth gravel with a few bumps and rocks to avoid. Only sometimes in the winter it can become impassable for most cars. The surroundings are mostly short sagebrush and juniper as far as you can see. There is a parking area with a bathroom and a trailhead. A short trail brings visitors right to the middle of Crack in the Ground. There are a couple of entry points to Crack in the Ground with no rock walls. These must have been low or weak points that broke down where sand filled in the ground in the middle. Overall, the arid climate causes little erosion, so the rest of the crack will be intact for a very long time. Most people go south at this point as it's much more hiker-friendly than these boulders to the north. But climbing around and exploring is always fun for those that are able to. Crack in the Ground is scientifically known as a volcanic fissure. Its formation happened a long time ago when other volcanic activity was occurring. Below Crack in the Ground is a fault, which is the intersection between large shifting blocks of rock. Nearby eruptions caused even more movement and covered this fault line. One side of the fault shifted up and the other down, so much that the lava rock on the surface bent and fractured. One clue left behind is how the west wall on the left stands much taller than the other side. The north end of the crack ends where it is filled in by a corner of a huge lava flow. This lava flow is known as the Four Craters lava bed, and it is a wilderness study area. A wilderness study area is basically a placeholder for a land that is not officially designated as a wilderness. They are often used for research and mostly share the same rules as wilderness. The name of the area comes from the 4 craters or cinder cones that are perfectly aligned with each other. A cinder cone occurs when magma containing pressurized gas rises from underground. When the magma breaks through to the surface, the pressure is released and the gas expands to shoot lava in the air. The lava cools to rock as it gets shot up and down multiple times until settling. Most of the rocks end up in a circle around the vent, forming the cone shape. These cones formed about 14,000 years ago in a parallel line to crack in the ground. Some research states that the eruption caused the ground to shift more, forming the crack at about the same time. The difference in soil and vegetation compared to surroundings is an indicator of it being a younger lava flow. A much older volcanic feature is up the road, northwest of Crack in the Ground. The really old volcano of the area is Green Mountain. The eruption of this shield volcano covered the area 700 and some thousand years ago. The walls of Crack in the Ground are made up of basalt from this eruption. Due to being so old, most of the surface of this lava bed has turned to sand, soil, and vegetation. Today, Green Mountain has a campground and fire lookout. It's a nice place to get a view of the surrounding basin. Most visitors just go to see Crack in the Ground, but Green Mountain and 4 craters provide some extra information to this volcanic story. Back at the trail where we first went north, instead going south goes much further into the crack. The path is mostly family friendly, with a few spots that little ones may need help with. Parts of the crack have varying levels of difficulty, but there's a little something for everyone. Geological info can be hard to find, and there are often conflicting sources. Some say Crack in the Ground is only 1,000 or less years old, but that doesn't agree with any recent study or information. Sometimes people get info from old sources like this report from the 60s, and then they post that info, and then others see that newer posting and assume it's true. It's a fun challenge to question what you read, compare sources, and try to figure out what really makes sense. Recent research from the University of Oregon dated the opening of the crack to be roughly the same age as the nearby 4 craters lava, sometime around 14,000 years ago. With similar ages, the 4 craters' eruptions must have had some effect on the shifting ground that created Crack in the Ground. All the walls inside Crack in the Ground can be matched to the other side like a jigsaw puzzle. But some vertical shifting would have to be done to match the volcanic fissure's formation. Being such an arid climate, the crack is not eroded or filled in very much. But there is some sand on the floor of crack in the ground. This is known to be Mount Mazama ash that covered the area about 7,500 years ago when Crater Lake was formed. While the geology of this area is endless, the crack does end at some point. People either walk the entire 2 miles or find some rocks that they don't want to pass and end it there. I wouldn't call it accessible, but many people can at least walk through parts of this volcanic fissure. While the crack itself gets a lot of attention, the area's other often overlooked features are worth exploring too. Even while surrounded by interesting volcanic landmarks, crack in the ground is one of a kind.